Hello, my name is Taylor Fleming, and this is my Classroom Community Screencast. I'm going to be discussing the different aspects of the classroom community I envision within the context of the domains of intellectual, social, emotional, and physical. I want to start off by addressing the aspects of the intellectual domain of classroom community, and the very first thing I want to establish at the beginning of the year is an environment of open questioning. And to me, this really means that no question is a dumb question, and also that making mistakes is not only okay, but the main way through which we learn. If we never made mistakes, we would never learn anything. And then throughout the year, I really want to do two things to establish this classroom community. And the first is to have high expectations for all students. As we've looked at earlier in the semester, having teacher expectations for students' success directly correlates with that students' results. And so having high expectations for all students will be crucial. And related to that is having the expectation that all students will try their best, while also acknowledging that students' best work really varies student to student. One student's best work will not look the same as another. But having these consistent high expectations for all students throughout the year will be really important in establishing that classroom community. And by the end of the year, I want to see that students are taking responsibility for their learning, and not only for, say, the assignments that they're turning in, but also that students are taking responsibility for being engaged and active learners. And the next domain I want to touch on is the social domain. I think there's a lot that goes into this in the classroom, and this social classroom community is really crucial. And the one thing that I would do right off the bat is have students participate in setting behavioral expectations and also expectations for interacting with their peers and adults. And I think this is really important because this creates buy-in for students. No longer is it a teacher or an authority figure telling students the way they need to behave, but it's students setting those expectations and then following up. And another important procedure that I want to establish in my classroom at the beginning of the year is this routine of peer mediation to resolve conflicts. And this is really important to me because I think that school is not only a place to obtain knowledge, but also a place where you establish a skill set that will serve you throughout the rest of your life. Throughout your educational career and into professional work. And I think that the process of resolving conflicts is going to be one of those really important life skills. And so I want to establish that routine right at the beginning of the year so that students become accustomed to it. And lastly, I want students to establish common goals for their learning right at the beginning of the year, to really sit down and decide as a group what will it look like when we are all learning. And one example of this might be that students decide that learning looks like all students being engaged and participating in discussion. And then several pieces that I want of the social classroom community that I want to see throughout the year is that, ensuring that each student feels like they have equal stake in the classroom community. And so each student will be equally involved not only in the learning activities that are going on, but also other responsibilities like making sure our classroom is clean. And the other two things that I want to see throughout the year is that students are consistently communicating their needs with their peers, and also myself as the teacher. I want students to feel comfortable to come to me and say, I'm not understanding this. I need more support. And I also want to hear about their triumphs. And finally, I want students to use I statements as a way to engender positive interactions in the classroom. And I want all of this to come together in students having established positive relationships with their classmates by the end of the year. So next, I want to touch on the emotional domain of the classroom community. And the biggest thing is that at the beginning of the year, significant time will be invested in children introducing themselves and also getting to know their classmates. And I think this will serve the purpose of having students feel like their individual identity is valued, and also that they are familiar with their classmates on a personal level. And another big thing I want to establish right at the beginning of the year, just like peer mediation, is this procedure of expressing their emotions in productive ways as opposed to maybe manifesting them in negative behavior. Also practicing coping strategies for things like anger and sadness, and these are also really important life skills, just like being able to resolve conflicts. And then ways that I'm going to really reinforce these skills throughout the year is that, all student emotional responses are respected and validated, whether they are positive or negative. And then also, students' unique identities are celebrated and respected. All students are different. All students have different backgrounds, values, and these will all be celebrated and respected. And so by the end of the year, I want students to be able to confidently communicate their emotions with their classmates, as well as the teacher. And the final domain I want to touch on is the physical domain of classroom community. And there are two things that I want to do at the beginning of the year. Firstly, I want the students to know that there are physical spaces in the classroom that are designed to work for them. And an example of this might be a comfortable space that a student could go to if they are feeling overwhelmed, overstimulated. An example of this I've seen in some early childhood classrooms is like a small tent, which could be really good. It's also important to keep in mind that students need to be supervised at all times. So those are two things to balance. And then the other thing I want to do at the beginning of the year is to have students bring in things that are important to them into the space. An example might be family pictures of all the different families, no matter what form that takes. And displaying these so that the classroom becomes a student's home away from home. And then throughout the year, I will work to maintain a clean and warm environment, and as well as establishing consistent routines that are followed so that students know what to expect. And by the end of the year, I want students to be able to move comfortably throughout the space and be independent in retrieving supplies they need. And finally, that students know what is expected of them because of that consistent routine, and that they know how to act in those different situations. I created a sample classroom map to kind of exemplify some of those things I was talking about on the previous slide. In the upper right-hand corner, I tried to emulate that kind of safe space for students that might need some quiet. And I also, two other things I want to point out are the student tables. It's important to me to use student tables as opposed to desks because I really want to encourage collaboration as another way to build those social skills that we want students to gain. And I also included 2 rugs in the classroom as spaces for whole group learning and things like morning meetings. So in conclusion, the classroom community is the cornerstone of student success, and students must feel safe, respected, and accepted as part of the group in order to learn. And it's also important that this group is striving toward common goals of learning and growth. Thank you very much.